there. The wind is blowing, the snow is falling, and I'm going to be taking off for Portland here in just a few hours so that I can fly down to Vegas to go hang out with Mike Zuber and the crew for the One Rental at a Time conference, and I'm really looking forward to it. In this video, we are going to be talking about the housing market disaster that is now taking place. It is a big issue for a lot of people when you think about housing being probably the number one worry for most people out there who do not have a very secure, stable place to be, to place to live. And so if this is a concern for a lot of people out there, the harder it gets to get housing or to build housing or to acquire housing is the stress and anxiety that a lot of people end up feeling, and then that ends up reflecting into the broader economy. So housing is important. Like, that's the number one biggest expense for most people. It's the biggest concern. It's a very concerning point when it comes to people who are looking for it and can't find it. It becomes like the most important thing for them. So in today's video, we are going to discuss as many different elements of the housing market as we can so that we can get a better understanding of what has taken place. So when I talk about housing and I talk about the depressive state that we are now facing when it comes to housing, especially for even the good job earners, like people who have what they would feel as being a decent job, can no longer get into the housing market, can't even get into a house any longer. Even with a 20% down payment, the income is still not enough to buy the house in, or to take out the mortgage on that house because of how expensive the interest rates are. So we're going to cover all these topics, as many as we can. We're going to hit the comment section as much as we can in this video to get those questions. We're going to hit the like button. Everybody run out there right now. 87 people watching with 15 likes. Go hit the like button. That'll get more people to join in on this. So let's talk firstly about the immigration. This is probably one of the biggest things that I think is being pushed out there as far as a narrative on what could take place going into the future. Remember, this is a credible threat. It's not real. Right? Now, the idea of it is real. The actuality can be real. There is some evidence of it taking place. But the reality of the situation is we have not seen a mass deportation of immigrants. All right. Now, will that come? Could. Threats of it are there right now, not taking place. Now, I have to think about it. What sort of level of effort would actually need to take place in order to deport 5 million people? Like, I mean, I'm just trying to come up with a number, right? Just some crazy number out there, whatever it is, right? Whether you think it's more or less or, whatever. I'm just going to come up with a hypothetical number to come up with. I think about that, like the Gestapo level event that it would take in order to make that happen. Like, you have to go and knocking on people's doors to find them, right? Because they're not going to come right out and start, saying, hey, man, here I am. Okay. So this is going to be something that has to go in search of, right? And then on top of it, government never does anything efficiently, like never. Everything they do is a waste of money and time. So I would assume that after the deportation, if that could even occur, half of that would probably just end up being undone anyway, as most of these people would just come back, right? Otherwise, you would have to have a continuous effort taking place. And so can you imagine, like, they'd be like, okay, we're going to do this temporarily in order to find all the immigrants that are out there, and we need to get them out, right? So you go and you do all that, but then you have to go through another effort of preventing them from coming back, right? So now you have ever increasing amounts of effort taking place to make this happen. So again, besides even the housing part of it, just to try and understand that portion of it is very difficult, because most of the time what you're going to end up seeing is something that doesn't occur the way that people thought that it was going to. Very much like, how my buddies were, a long time ago. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. There was big news about going, I guess it was probably over 5 years ago now, about the crisis level event that was taking place at the border. I had buddies who were going to go grab their ARs and run down to the border to go help protect it. And I'm like, Are you serious? That's what you're going to go do? You know, and they were like, yeah, this is a serious matter. We need to go down there and deal with this thing right now. And now here it is a few years later. And I mean, maybe some people still feel that way, but I don't hear people talking in such fashions like that any longer. Right? Maybe they should. Maybe they do. I don't know. Right? But I know my buddies ain't talking about it like that any longer. Right? But they are talking about government effort to deport a bunch of people. And so again, I think about that. It was just like, man, that's going to take a hell of a lot of effort to make that happen. Right? And now, let's say it does happen, right? And say everything was cool. Like, oh no, man, they're out there, cool. They're going to stay home, right? Okay. Like that's gonna, right? Anyway, so now you have 30% from what I was reading in this article right now. I don't know if that number is accurate, right? But let's say that, you know, who cares about the 5 million part of it? Let's just talk about this number, about 30% of immigrants. All of a sudden, or 30% of the workforce that does construction now disappears. Like there's already labor shortage within the construction field. And now they're going to take 30% of that away and expect there to be plenty of labor out there who understands the process of building a home. A lot of people just think that, you know, you can just put a hammer in somebody's hand and they can go and just put a house together. Well, that's probably true, but they're going to have some guidance with people who have actually done the process, right? And that's generally the people who are actually with hammers in hand doing it, showing other people how to do it. And if you take those people away, who's going to show the other people how to do it? There's even less people to do that. You get what I'm saying? It was just like, it's an effort that is much bigger than I think a lot of people give it credit to. Okay? Now, granted, that will do wonders for the construction labor that is left here because it's going to get super, super expensive, right? And they're going to get paid a lot for it because there's going to be so much less of them. And I can't imagine that making it easier on the housing market. Like, you know, I mean, are you going to go and be able to build a bunch of new homes if you just took 30% of the labor away? That doesn't, I mean, it was just like, to me, it was just like, okay, so we got a team of guys here. Right? We got 5 guys who build houses, this house. They are badass at it. They can knock out an entire house in 6 weeks. And now all of a sudden you're going to cut it down to 3 of them and expect that same performance? I doubt it. In fact, it's probably going to take twice as long. So this is one of the concerns that I have when I think about all of a sudden you're going to get rid of all the move all these immigrants out. And I'm thinking, no way, that is not going to go over very well. Right? Not in the labor force, not when it comes to construction. Right? So again, that whole idea within itself doesn't seem like it would benefit housing, in my opinion. One is it would in the sense that if you could get it done, right? If it would actually happen, because it would free up the housing, right? There would be a bunch of people that would be missing that would free it up. But we are already short. So what it would do is make us less short. It would still be in supply shortage, just less of a supply shortage. So here again, the concern is that if you're trying to increase supply and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to get rid of a bunch of demand by removing immigrants, what you are doing is you're lessening the demand for it, but you're not increasing the supply, and there will still be a supply shortage. And it will be even more difficult to increase the supply, considering that you are making it more difficult on the labor side of things. Okay. All right. So I'm going to set that one aside. Let's go through some of the questions, right? I'm going to stop talking about that one, but let's go through some of the questions and see what people have to say about it. Thank you, Brody. Thank you, All Night, for being here. All right, let's go through. I'm not going to go quite to the very beginning, but thank you all for being here. Let's start with insurance rates are more than 50% higher in sanctuary cities. If you don't live in one, you don't know what's really going on. Okay, so I think that's probably something to consider, but that's also not the broader entire housing market that is like isolated housing markets, which are probably, a really big deal, right? I mean, totally. I get that part of it. And if you do see it in a different fashion there that is unique to you, then that's probably a very good logical way of looking at it for your particular area and the decisions that you are making. But again, in the broader sense of the entire housing market across the United States, gonna have to say that's like an isolated kind of circumstance. All right. They ain't going nowhere without financial benefits. Okay. Also, low income housing in New York is starting knowing as skyscraper prisons. Okay. Interesting. Let's see here. Eddie, please don't post in caps. Thank you, Brody. I don't read all. And to be honest with you guys, I just won't read all cap comments. So I just blast past them. For the most part, I mean, I have read them, but for the most part, I just don't. I don't even read them. All right. I can't blame MAGA. People are desperate, but history is very clear knowing this will go. I agree with that. And we will talk about that here in just a few minutes. I was just going to see if there's any other questions, statements about the immigration portion of things. Save that luck for Vegas all nighter hider. Yeah. I'm going to see. Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's at the end of the day. We'll be hanging out in Vegas. Well, hopefully, man, this storm is getting bad. I hope I can make it to Portland anyway. What time is it? It's 10 o'clock. So, yeah, I was supposed to take off here in like 4 hours. I might take off in 3. Let's see here. Let's cruise down. Okay, we got a super chat from BP. $5. Thank you so much. When you mentioned higher wealth inequality or more pain and suffering other day, could you elaborate? Yeah, I love the content. Yeah, well, that was actually going to be towards the end of the video because I figured that would probably answer a lot of questions. But since that seems to be like really what we can dive into, can you talk about your stance on Israel? No. The reason why I won't talk about my stance on Israel is because you're going to start diving me into conspiracy theory stuff that I'm not really into. I'm more into monetary policy coming from the Federal Reserve and what it is that we can do about that. I think monetary policy, including that of mortgage-backed security purchases and holdings on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, is very much a concern for a lot of people out there when it comes to where mortgages can be as far as the interest rates on the level of those. People have a tendency to look at the Federal Reserve and believe that when they are adjusting interest rates at the Fed, that that's going to influence the mortgage rates. But that is not the case. It doesn't seem to be true at all. When we look at what has happened over the last few years, the mortgage market works independently of the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm not saying that the Federal Reserve doesn't influence it and not influence it in a major way when it does its asset purchases of quantitative easing, lowering interest rates to zero, driving down the mortgage rates as low as they were by continuously doing those asset purchases. Yes, I agree that the Federal Reserve is very much in a manipulative stance when it comes to mortgages, but this unwinding of the balance sheet and allowing mortgages to just simply, the mortgage-backed securities is what I mean, to simply roll off the balance sheet, which is then not necessarily manipulating the market, but then again, it is manipulation of the market if they are holding them in the first place. But this now allows this kind of almost neutral stance. Hey, we are a very benign operation, rolling off the quantitative, doing the quantitative tightening with the balance sheet, right? Now, in that within itself gives the markets now the ability to start finding their equilibrium within themselves. To say, hey, those bonds right now, those mortgage-backed securities are paying what it is that I want. And I don't care what the Federal Reserve is doing. It's the yield on return that I am getting from that mortgage-backed security. I'm talking about the investor looking at that, saying, that's it. That's my price. That's my yield. That's my in it. I'm getting in. Right? Once they get in on that, that's where the interest rates are set. The Federal Reserve can say, hey, we're lowering rates, we're raising rates. It doesn't really matter if the market itself, I mean, it does when they are in their quantitative easing because they're buying a bunch of these things, and then that gives the market perception or the investors a different perception of front running the Federal Reserve. But in this sense, it's very different. It's the investors who are saying, yes, that's the return on investment that I am looking at. The price is right, the yield is right, I'm in. This is where the interest rates are found. If you throw a concern, you're a weakening economy or something of that nature, then what's going to happen is the demand on return from that investment is going to go up. They're going to say, hey, I'm concerned about inflationary pressures coming in the future, concerned about problems or whatever. If I'm going to lend my money out into a mortgage, I want to get a higher return for it because I'm taking on a bunch of risk. And up goes the interest rates. This, again, doesn't have anything to do with the Fed, really. All right? When they're doing their balance sheet adjustments, it does on the upside, like when they're increasing it, it has much more of a profound impact on the mortgage markets than the unwinding does. And the interest rate setting almost has nothing to do with it. Right? I mean, it was funny because people were saying it back in the day, and I brought this one up before, that when the Federal Reserve wanted to move and made the announcement that they were going to be raising rates, mortgages started moving up almost immediately. The moment that they said that they were going to do, and the credible threat was well established, the mortgages started moving up in a dramatic fashion, right? And people started saying, look, the Fed has lost control of the market. So they never had control in the first place. They only had influence. And they influenced it dramatically, and then they were less influenced. And then the market was just like, you know what? Screw the Fed. I want a return on my capital investment, and I'm demanding a higher return. And then that shot up almost immediately. You think about it, the Fed was like, doot, 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 doot. And interest rates on the mortgages went, choop. They shot right up to the very top, and then they didn't keep lockstep. People were like, oh man, mortgages are going to go to 15%. The Fed funds rates are at, like, they're just getting started, and mortgages are at 7%, 8%, and they're going to go up to 15%. And they just stayed right there as the Fed continued to incrementally move their interest rates up. So the Fed's not in control of those mortgage rates, not in that sense, right? They do a lot better job of like bringing the mortgage rates down on the quantitative easing side of things, because they move speculation into the market. They move the investors to say, holy shit, we can. I got to stop cussing. They say, holy moly, look at that. We can buy into these mortgages and front run the Federal Reserve, knowing there is definitely a buyer out there. One with the printing press who has like a guaranteed purchasing power. I mean, a purchasing power for the moment that they're doing, right? Until they actually do it, right? And then it's over. So anyway, understanding it in that fashion. Okay, back to the question. I kind of lost track there. Let's bring it back a little bit. We got 400 people watching. Thank you so much for joining in on today's live stream. 77 likes. Go hit that like button while you're joining in on the live stream. We'll get more people to join in. Okay, back to the original question on the super chat. When you mentioned higher wealth inequality or more pain and suffering the other day, could you elaborate on that? Love the content. Okay, so we got to understand how it is that the inequality is taking place to begin with. Okay. So when you have to understand how the Cantillon effect works, how the Cantillon effect really impacts every single person individually, or a company, or a municipality, or a country, or a bank. It doesn't matter. Like, everything kind of goes down the same way when it comes to how the Cantillon effect works. And really, you can kind of break it down into, I think it was like 6 stages is how I kind of refer to it as, and I'll try to remember those stages. I don't have the notes in front of me. But it starts with being an industrious person, right? So if you're an industrious person, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to end up enjoying the new money that you get in. So that's the key to it, enjoying the new money. So you are 18 years old, you just graduated high school, you've just got yourself a job, you're just now earning an income, and now you actually have, say you got even a decent job, like, you know, you're earning above minimum wage, and you're in a fairly low cost area. Right, so you're actually doing quite well. I'm going to describe my like the way it occurred for me when I was a kid. Things are changed, so it's not the same anymore. But I'm just going to kind of describe my own life. So you first get industrious, right? And you move out of the house, and what is it that you have? Like, you have an apartment, right? And then you have like your own cookware, you have your own, like, if you have a car, maybe, because you can afford that, the insurance that goes with it. Well, you think about it, these are luxurious items. Right? If you didn't have the job, you wouldn't be able to enjoy any of those things. So your industriousness, right? Whatever it is, working at McDonald's, working at the lumber yard, working for your family, whatever is going on, you have become an industrious person, which has now risen your standard of living. Like, before, you were living off of your parents or something of that nature, and now you are providing for yourself. So you have risen your standard of living away from that of being dependent upon somebody else to now being dependent upon your own efforts. This is a rising in the standard of living. You can provide your own house, you can provide your own car. Now, granted, it may not be as nice as the house that you were living in, which kind of in your mind is a lowering of standard of living, but you're acting independently of being a dependent of your parents. So that is the rise in standard of living. Owning your own, having your own, being your own. Well, the more you do this, the more industrious you become, the more you're going to enjoy that luxury, right? You're going to get a nicer house. You're going to get a nicer car. You're going to wear nicer clothes. And so this is going to start raising your standard of living the more money that you start to bring in. And generally, most people act this way or behave this way because they are living like paycheck to paycheck for the most part, right? So they're driving a crappy car and they're driving, whatever, and they're trying really hard to earn more money so that they can get a better car to drive. So they don't have to drive around in a crappy little vehicle, right? And so this is how people end up to have a tendency to work, is that they work really hard so they can get to that next level of a standard of living, to have the better apartment, to have the nicer thing. And they just keep increasing that standard of living, which is the luxurious experience. So that's the key to understand, right? You're an industrious person, you raised your standard of living, and you're moving into luxuries, right? Believe it or not, having a very reliable, modest car is a luxury. I drive a 2002 S10 that is got the door that's been hyperextended, the fender's all screwed up, it leaks on the inside, it has a nice stereo to it, right? Heater works, brakes work. It's not a luxurious item at all, right? It is far from my chariot, right? The chariot I would want to be in, but it gets me back and forth to work, and that's all I needed to do, right? If I was to raise that up to a better vehicle, like a lot of people tell me I should do, I would then increase my standard of living, which would make it more difficult to now compete against somebody who's going to be doing my job for a lot less. So this is where it comes in. This is where nations start to suffer, because now I have to either become more industrious at what I am doing, become that much more efficient, that harder, because at what I, make it that much better at what I do in order to bring in the income, because now I'm going to compete against somebody who's willing to do my job for less, because I have increased my income, increased my standard of living. Now, if my standard of living hadn't increased, if there was a tough time in which that I needed to fall back on my income, well, I could totally compete, but my standard of living can't. Right? See, I could earn that same money, but I cannot earn that same money and retain my standard of living. So my standard of living has to fall. This is the pain. Nobody wants to experience pain. Or I can try that much harder to move myself up, because this is what I'm going to need to do in order to compete. So now you can see how this inequality is going to grow. That means when I take my money and I earn that income, that higher level, instead of moving into luxurious items, I have to move into dividend paying stocks. I have to move it into rental properties. I have to move it into business opportunities. Once I start doing that kind of thing, the people who come in who are now going to compete against me in my job and may actually take it away from me also have to compete against my assets that are also earning me income. This is the inequality taking place. The more you bring new money into the system, the more I can put myself in that position and continuously move myself away from the lower income earners who are going to try and compete against my income or against my skills and take my income away. Again, if you are a prosperous nation, when you're manufacturing, you're producing the world's greatest stuff, you send that stuff out there to the world, you increase your standard of living because you're profiting off of these sales of awesome things to the world. You get your standard of living moving up, and then some dude who's sleeping on the dirt over in another country saying, hey, I'm about ready to make your product the same as you can. There's no way you're going to be able to compete against that. Manufacturers are going to look and say, hey, man, yeah, we're kind of greedy, but we're also needing to be a profitable nation or profitable business. And unfortunately, your nation is too expensive to operate in. And that dude's willing to do your job over there who's sleeping on the dirt. So guess what? Your standard of living is far too high in order to keep manufacturing here in your nation. Separation between the rich and the poor. You see? If you had invested into the company, well, that company can move over. Sure, it's like, yeah, I'm still profiting. I'm still making money off of that because they're paying a dividend that I get. You see how the capitalists move themselves into a position in which that they live independently? See, everybody else is suffering this inequality. They're like, hey, do something about this. They're blaming the government. They blame everybody in society about why this inequality is growing. But the one thing that they don't blame is the economic force that is naturally occurring, that always occurs when new money is injected into the system. It's going to do this. There's nothing you can do to stop it. You're like, well, what about taxes? What about this? What about that? What about the other thing? And I sit back and I was like, go ahead, do it. Do it. I've been doing it all this time. It doesn't stop the underlying economic forces. They are still at play. I don't care how you cover them up. You can cover them up with tariffs. You can cover them up with subsidies. You can cover it up with all this stuff. All this political action is all superficial when it comes down to understanding that the underlying economic forces are not going away. Okay? And once you recognize them, once you see them, and you're like, oh, okay, so here you're going to put a bunch of government effort and change the way that the laws of the economic forces work, or are you just going to observe it differently? Because observing it, I can't even say the word, is far different from the logical sense that gravity still exists even though you're looking at a plane flying. Can't say that gravity doesn't exist. You're like, it doesn't exist right there in this plane. But like you're telling me that the laws of nature, of gravity, that will bring that plane back down to the ground doesn't exist. Of course it exists. You just can't see it because the plane is flying. And it's flying like it always had flown before. Just the same as it's probably going to do tomorrow. And like I'm going to do later today. But to understand that there is still an underlying economic force of gravity. Right? I think everybody does. And that's the same thing for economics. All right. From 1992 until now, 4.63% house prices increase average. Huh. Please remember to hit the like button. Thank you, Brody. All Nighter says Big Hill with a big wave. Eventually, you start to eat yourself. Hey, gang. This is what happened with outsourcing jobs. It made economic sense to pay less. No, you got to understand, it does make economic sense, but it was not a decision by it. This is an economic force taking place, right? But okay, I'm sorry, I guess I should finish. But what it's worth and what it does, that destroys it in the long term. Right, and that's the problem that I think most people end up facing, is that they have to understand that economics is a cycle. It's a cyclical thing, and that typically it was easier to recognize it when there was a gold standard. Right, it was easy to cracking my knuckles on this camera here. It was easier to understand how the economy would function with these economic forces when you had a gold standard, because there was a limitation to how far you could actually push it. Right? With an unlimited money source and new money that can come into the system, you have this ever-growing inequality that should never have existed, because there's an equilibrium that is found when you're on a gold standard, or when any kind of transactable currency of something like that. See, what'll end up happening is those industrious people, like say the United States, for example, and this is the same case that should have taken place throughout history and eventually will occur to the United States, and that is the gold should have been redistributed back out to the rest of the world back in the 70s. See, we had accumulated all the gold because we had produced all the wonderful stuff that we did. We sent that stuff out there to the world sent us their money, which was the gold. We accumulated all the gold. They could no longer make purchases from us because we had the money. They were like, we were like, hey man, we want to sell you more stuff. And they were like, okay, give us the gold back. Right? And we were like, well, no. And they're like, well, we can't make any purchases because you got it all. You see what happens here? And so now the United States is like in the position in which that, we raised our standard of living. The ultimate thing to do would be making purchases of foreign production. And you start sending that gold back out there to the rest of the world until eventually you find yourself in poverty and misery because you don't have any gold anymore because you gave it all back to the world. That's the way the natural progress happens with the gold standard. It's why people don't understand being on a gold standard is a very bad deal for the United States right now. If we were a productive nation, if we were industrious, we could totally do it. We could totally be back on a gold standard. We would be accumulating the gold and Bitcoin, all that stuff, yeah. But if you are not an industrious nation and you are a consumer nation, a debtor nation, and this is the way that you are surviving, there is no way you want to go on a gold standard. You would absolutely, me personally, I would do great, personally, right? Now, I'm assuming I would do great because I understand what is happening there and I would hopefully position myself accordingly for it. But I think most people would end up suffering in pain and misery if we were to go back on a gold standard. It's just the way it is. And it's unfortunate for most people to see it that way, because they actually beg for a pain and misery outcome for a lot of people out there when it comes to that. And I'm not trying to say that we are not facing pain and misery anyway, and that maybe being on a gold standard might be better. I'm just saying that most people are used to the pain that they are experiencing. Like, it's better to understand the evil you have than the evil you don't. And again, if you believe in the gold standard, go be on one. Man, I believe in gold and silver and Bitcoin and all the other stuff out there. In fact, I even believe in the dollar, right? I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying Bitcoin's a good thing or bad thing or any of that stuff. It's just an is, and I need to position myself accordingly with it. That's all there is to it. Like, there is no fixing it. You're not going to fix it. You have to position yourself in accordance to it. The idea of fixing it is not, it doesn't make sense, because there's no fixing it. There's people out there who are absolutely killing it right now. Why would they need it fixed? There's nothing to fix, right? Be that person. Be in the energy, the vibration, the understanding of what it is that you need to do right here, right now to kill it. To be in a position that says, no, I want to stay exactly the way I am, and then hope that everything around lines up to my beliefs and understandings on the way it should be, is going to be you're going to sit around waiting for a very long time. Because it isn't going to happen. All right, moving on. What's the next thing we're talking about? We got 490 people watching. Thank you so much for joining in on today's live stream. We were supposed to be talking about housing market and how difficult it is to acquire a house going into the future due to the fact that we are now facing massive inequality. The property owners and capitalists are the ones who separate themselves from the poor, from everybody else. That's it. It's just capitalist and property owners. And to think that we should have a rise of the working power or something like that, good luck. All right? I believe that you should work really hard, but don't expect that you're going to get anything like that from it. Right? I mean, because that's not going to happen. I work really hard at a day job just like everybody else. I know that day job just won't cut it. My day job, my wife's day job together won't cut it. My day job, my wife's day job, my side hustle won't cut it. My day job, my wife's day job, my side hustle, doing YouTube. Yeah, now I can start to make it. Think about that. How much effort it actually has to take nowadays in order to get yourself on the other side of the wedge to become a property owner, right? Not even a property owner. I'll never be a property owner. Even this mortgage on this house with a low interest rate means I will not pay it off early, and that by the time I'm done paying for it, I'll probably be close to death anyway. It will never be mine, ever. I understand that. However, the ability to profit and sell the place, or profit with a rental income, or profit in some sort of ability having the property in my name, is definitely something that is going to separate me from the poor. Buying into Bitcoin is a very good speculation, but that's all it will ever be, is a speculation. Gold has proven history behind it. If you want to put your faith into Bitcoin that's similar to gold, I understand. I've done far better in Bitcoin in Bitcoin stocks, Bitcoin and Coinbase, than I have in any other position other than maybe the house. Like, it is done far better than anything else that I have done. I didn't even expect it to. I didn't hope for it to, and I didn't even really care if it did. And it did by far the best. Now, I can't deny that. I can't, right? It's done wonderful, but it's still a speculation, and I have very little faith in it, right? And now somebody heard me say that one time, and they say, you have no faith in Bitcoin price going up. And I said, I didn't say that. I said, I don't have faith in it. I don't have faith in it being a world reserve currency. I don't have a faith in it being a proper place to save. I don't have faith in it doing anything, like, at all. Whatever happens to it happens. And if it does go up to, $5 million, I'm going to be really happy that I bought some Bitcoin. But I don't expect that to happen. Right? What I do expect to happen is the tradition of gold being the asset of finality, right? There is really nothing else out there that it can do what gold can do. And so understanding that the physical item within itself is not a thing that a whole lot of people are actually doing also makes it quite unique. Right? It's easier to just understand it for what it is than what it should be or what it could be or anything else. insurance policy away from that third-party claim. That's what it is. All right, people get freaked out over gold and silver. I guess my son picked up a virus on the plane and spread it to all of us. Okay, are you going to be in Vegas? Raining in Vegas too. Looks cool on the Luxor windows. Right on. So I take it you are in Vegas now. Right on. I love you, brother. Thank you, P. Uh, hello, everyone. Well, hello, Nelson357. What housing crisis? Toll Brothers, for example, went for $40 share per share a few years ago and now at 123 per share, having been as high as 160. Well, I think the crisis comes in is that the majority of the people out there will never think about it. There's only so many houses, and everybody wants one. Not everybody wants one, but there's a fair amount of people who want one. There is a supply-demand issue that has taken place here. There's far more people who want a place than there are places to even buy. And now I understand that there's people out there who's like, oh no, bro, you don't understand. There's so many empty places out there. No. Okay, I get that, right? That's the property owners separating themselves from everybody else. That's part of the Cantillon effect. It's part of the economy. That's what's taken place. You're right. Property ownership is a sign of inequality, right? Or the inequality growth, right? More people eat empty houses is a sign of that. How the hell can you have a house that nobody lives in? That's weird, right? How much money do you possibly have that you can do that? That's a lot. I'm looking at some dude who has a yacht. It costs like, I forget, it was like $2 million a month to even just possess, right? Just to keep it maintenance and operating and the 40 people on it and all the other stuff, the crew. It was like, what in the world? Who has this kind of money? This is insane, right? To think about. But yeah, that's the inequality. That's the property ownership. And you think about it, it's because new money comes into the system. The moment that people beg government to do something, it doesn't matter what it is. They say government should do, bam, inequality. I don't care what they do after that. The moment that the people say the government should, and that's it, it's over. Inequality begins to grow. I don't care how you do it. Right? Now, here's the problem that most people end up facing is that if they want to recognize it as them doing something, usually it looks like the boot on the face of the people. You cannot have this. You cannot do that. You cannot get into luxuries. You cannot have that business. You cannot operate in this fashion. We are going to control all of it. It all belongs to the state, and we're going to spread it out the way we see fit. That's the way they disguise the inequality. So you don't see it. And then wonder how it is that there's rich oligarchies in this. It's just like, nah, right? You can't stop the inequality. You can cover it up, make it not look the way it is. Make it obvious or something of that nature. Here in the United States, it's totally obvious. We don't give it, we don't care. Show it off. Show off as much luxury as you can. In fact, show it off to the point that it's even fake. All right? It's all about inequality here in the United States. And that's the unfortunate consequence of having new money. Oh, okay, cool. We're back. Sorry. Okay, cool. We're back. Sorry, I lost it. But that's it. Like, what else can you do? You can tell government, hey, don't do this anymore. Don't participate. Get out of the way. Do all these other things. And then people will be suffering at the bottom going, where's the freaking help? What are you just going to let us just suffer down here? And, it's just like, well, it's either you can suffer down there for a while and let the government unwind for a bit and not give you any kind of support, not give you anything to as far as help, or we can try and help, but you're going to find that the inequality is going to grow. Which one do you want? Like, that's it. That's the only two directions it can happen. I mean, again, you can try. And I'm not saying like you can't like tax the rich and feed the poor, right? You can try all that other stuff. And I'm not trying to say that, somebody shouldn't put out some sort of effort or try to come up with some sort of theory. Like, people ask me about modern monetary theory all the time, right? And I'm thinking this is not a real concept of economics. It's as if you can all of a sudden just incorporate a whole brand new system into things, not realizing that this system actually evolved to what it is. It wasn't designed. There are men who use it as if they had designed it because they know it that well. And so it gives that appearance like it's designed, but it very much evolved into this. We did not, we did not have to accept the dollar. We did not have to go off a gold standard. We chose to. We literally chose to do it because we wanted to do transactions. And I'm saying we because I myself could participate in the idea of getting out of the dollar altogether. I could go on a gold standard. The problem is that I can't force everybody else to go on a gold standard. And now when we think about the times that we had the opportunity, we could have looked at the different bills. We could have had dollar bills in our hand, right? These Federal Reserve notes, silver certificates, U.S. Treasury notes, and we could say, okay, I'm going to accept this one, the silver certificate, but those ones you're going to have to come up with more silver certificates before I'll relieve my debt, right? And I say, it does say legal tender on there, but I'm not forced to receive anything, right? You can demand whatever it is that you want, or not. People have, I think this is something that I think a lot of people have misunderstood, is that we are not, there is no store, there is no person, there is nothing out there that is required to accept a dollar. Did you know that? The dollar is completely 100% voluntary. Most of us have no idea that we have signed ourselves up for them to now require a dollar from us, which then has us working for dollars. We didn't have to do it. There is no law that requires anybody to use it. It's voluntary and 100%. When you sign up to get a job, you are signing up to pay taxes in dollars. You didn't have to do that, right? If you didn't do it, you weren't going to get the job, but you didn't have to do it. You don't have to accept dollars for work. You don't have to accept dollars for anything, not even a store. I mean, I've seen stores deny cash. They don't deny dollars in itself, that they are still getting paid in dollars, but you don't have to accept cash. You can accept anything you want. Now, at the end of the day, you're supposed to tell government that you did accept it as a particular dollar amount so you could pay taxes on it, but there's no requirement for any of that. Not even taxes or law. That's right, all-nighter. The reason why I bring that up is because we sign ourselves up to pay it, right? Like if we didn't sign ourselves up to pay the taxes, then we would not be like contracted to do it or whatever. And then even in itself, that can be, circumvented. And I understand that all-nighter probably knows that a million times better than I do, so I'm not going to even try to explain it. So. All MMT does is explain how fiat currency functions. MMT, no, I don't believe that, because I don't believe that I don't believe that most people recognize what it is that fiat currency is actually doing to the economy, right? I don't think they recognize that. Like, a lot of people think hyperinflation coming from the dollar. And this is like a major concern. This is like one of the biggest concerns that I hear coming from like the people when they think about like the Federal Reserve and the printing of money and stuff like that, is that they're going to create this hyperinflation scenario. And then they use places like Zimbabwe or the Weimar Republic or something of that to illustrate like the example of how this works. And I find it very difficult to understand that, because these nations that went into these hyperinflation scenarios did not have themselves as a world reserve currency. And so the important part about this is the demand for the currency itself. And so as these nations were, the people were losing faith in them, and, they were trying to outrun their debts and all this other stuff, which is a good example of what could happen here in the United States. I think the difference that comes from it is how much people are actually writing debts that are due in dollars that doesn't have anything to do with the United States. And this is hard for a lot of people to internalize because you don't see it outright and you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, right? Now, if you go and search it out, there's plenty of people who give some really good analysis on how this operates, mainly people like Jeff Snyder and Brent Johnson. They talk about this quite a bit. But to understand that this is existing out there, and in order to unwind these debts that have been written in dollars, they need to acquire the dollars to do it, which actually strengthens the dollar. So as you have issues that now begin to happen within the entire global economy, and people are like, oh crap, I'm getting out. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to hold this dollar denominated debt. Getting out of that debt in itself, like to make that debt disappear, means that you need to get dollars. So once you get the dollars and you pay the debt off, then that thing disappears, right? Then people will think, okay, well, once these dollars have disappeared, then that will mean that the dollars will eventually come back to the United States. And I would agree with that, except for this. As that contract disappears, that pulls dollars out of circulation. Now, it's not like the dollars that we are using, like in the sense that paid off the debt, but once that debt has been created, not only is that being used as dollars, but then you have dollars being used as dollars. So the dollars are acquired, pays off the debt, that debt disappears, it pulls dollars out of the system. This was doing transactions. It's not doing transactions anymore. So now the demand for dollars increases even more. You see, so even the simple act of getting out of the dollar would cause the dollar to strengthen, which is the exact opposite of hyperinflation. And this is like, I think this is such an interesting concept that nobody really considers. They want to skip past all that and go right to the end and say, no, all the debts are gone. Hyperinflation is now imminent. But that's not the case. There's a course of action that needs to go down. All right, got a couple more credit cards to zero balance today. Thanks, UE, for the constant content. The consistent content. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nate. I really appreciate the $5. And it's really awesome to hear that you got your credit card down, because I'm actually putting stuff on my credit card right now to get down to Vegas and do all this other stuff. So I'm actually taking on a little bit of credit card debt just simply because it's coming up I haven't filed my taxes yet and don't know exactly how much I'm going to end up owing. And I'd rather hold on to that money just in case. So it's kind of funny. I had paid off my credit card and swore that I was never going to rack up debt again. And then, you put on just a little bit, like it starts, and then it's just like, well, then there's a trip, and then there's this, and it's like, oh man, okay. Discipline time, right? Got to pay this thing off in the next 3 months, right? And so it's just like, that's like my next goal is like, once I get back from Vegas, is like, okay, knock this thing out and get it over with. All right. Right on, Nate. Such a good feeling getting out of debt. It absolutely is. Yeah. You're really knowledgeable. Thank you, James. I appreciate that, man. I come out here and share this stuff not with any other intent than to try and share the information so that I can better understand it for myself. The YouTube ad revenue that I get from it is the absolute icing on the cake. Right? I mean, it changed my life. It's done so much wonders for me. But coming out here and sharing this understanding, getting the conversation going, helping other people to internalize the information so that they could be making appropriate decisions for their business, for their family, for their job, whatever it is that they got going on. This is how we do it. We are sharing information that nobody else shares. Like literally nobody else shares it like this. I mean, I have, and I don't mean to brag up the credible threat theory, but I know everybody's theory seems to be the best. Like, if you ask Brent Johnson, milkshake theory is the best. If you ask, anybody, they're all going to say that their idea is the best one. The credible threat theory is by far the most accurate. It takes into consideration that the Fed knew exactly what they were doing. Right? It's the only one. Everybody else says the Fed made a mistake, that they have no idea what they're doing, that they're evil intent and all this other stuff. And I agree. Okay, fine. All that stuff is true. Like every bit of it. And that's the point. That's the thing I find interesting about everybody else in their information, in their theories about it, is that it's all accurate stuff. It's all factual. Right? But the problem is that they have given it a meaning behind it that then clouds the actual vision of what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing. And the Fed did that on purpose. They stated it out there in such a way that now has the people's attention and focus and meaning behind their actions, giving that a particular direction. And this is what's weird about it. It's like, I know I talk like esoterically, like, in this crystal grip and hippie way, but it's the reality of the situation is that they are using a massive mind control over the people. And it works so well. And the funny thing about it is that it's not me like assuming this, saying, oh, hey, man, they got mind control over it. It's them saying how. Like, I got the documents of them within the makeup strategy. You go and Google it yourself. It's like an 87-page document or something, a 47-page document. But in that Federal Reserve document itself, talking about the makeup strategy, they say it right in there. If we deliver the message this way, this outcome. Deliver it that way, that outcome. They know how to do it. They know how to create an inflationary or disinflationary expectation within the markets by the delivery of the information. The action itself is the same. That part doesn't matter, right? What's the action? Oh, give me the action. Okay, let me talk. I'm going to either go, well, actually, I'm not going to go any further into this because I'm going to talk about this on stage. Going to Zuber's conference, going to be on stage talking credible threat theory, credible milkshake theory, milkshake threat theory. I like it. Sounds delicious. It really does. Sheridan Forbes, that's a choice. You guys have mass resources. All you need is federal spending for protective reasons while utilizing your real resources and labor. Okay. It's just simple as that. Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas told Jerome Powell the other day to lower interest rates next month. Politics. Big Elizabeth going to come down and speak a bunch of stuff that doesn't really mean anything to anybody, especially the Federal Reserve. I don't care who says what. The Federal Reserve is looking to get the Fed funds rate to neutral. All the rest of it is a bunch of hoopla. I don't care what Elizabeth Warren wants. I don't care what Donald Trump wants. I don't even care what Jerome Powell says. I don't care. That part is not important to me. The important part is understanding the monetary policy strategies from the Federal Reserve, from the FOMC, to understand that they are going for moderately above 2% on the inflation target. Understanding that they are using an average inflation targeting mechanism that has no mathematical formula for figuring it out. To know that they are looking to raise the neutral interest rate so that they can regain their ammo. Understanding that neutral interest rate rises off an inflation expectation. Right? This is the reality of the situation. Everything else is secondary. Everything else is secondary to it. People ask me all the time, and I will say, okay, well, the Fed is probably going to end up raising rates at some point in the future. You're going to see higher interest rates. And people are like, dude, are you nuts? You know nothing. You know nothing of the economy. You know nothing of the Fed. You know nothing of all this stuff. There is no way the government could ever possibly afford higher interest rates. Yet here we are. Right? People ask me all the time, how are they going to? I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm just saying that they are saying that they are going to do it. How it happens is mind-blowing to me in a lot of ways that they are able to pull it off. The fact that John Williams was saying the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. The fact that he said that in November of 2018, the problem we need to solve. This is the Federal Reserve talking to other central bankers out there saying the problem we need to solve, guys, like huddle around here. We got a problem. You know what the problem we need to solve? We need the risk of inflation that is persistently high. We need that. Because right now, we are suffering with the risk of inflation that is persistently too low. So how do we get it too high? Because that's the problem we need to solve. Ready? Okay, break. Go for it. All right, that's what happened. And now we have this persistently high inflation. The Federal Reserve doesn't have to do anything. They're like, you know what? Hey, guys, Trump, you got this for a little bit. we're gonna go take a hike, man. We're gonna bail out for a little bit. We're gonna keep interest rates right where they're at. We're not gonna really talk about what it is that needs to go up or down or sideways on it. We're just gonna confuse the hell out of the people when we talk. You go out there and push the inflation expectation for a while, could you? Oh yeah, no problem, guys. Give me that mic. Tariff, tariff, tariff. Boom, inflation expectation rises, and what happens? Neutral interest rate moves ever closer to the Fed funds rate. The closer it gets to the Fed funds rate, what happens? Less restriction on the economy. People wonder why we have a resilient economy. I wonder how that works out. Maybe it's because that's what they intended on doing, because that's what they described on doing, and the Uneducated Economist have been doing videos about that very thing for over a year. So we watch it happen, and like nothing's taken place. There's like nothing except for a bunch of credible threats. And don't get me wrong, they are very credible. Like they could very well go through. But right now, what is it doing? It's raising the inflation expectation. It's raising the neutral interest rate. It's getting ever closer to the Fed funds rate, which is exactly what the Federal Reserve was looking for. So how is it that they are making a mistake again? How is it that they are failing? They wanted the neutral interest rate to be elevated. They wanted their Fed funds rate to be at the neutral position. And that way they could have this elevated inflation that continuously is pushed into the people so that they could have this outcome take place. Like, is it not obvious? Like once you hear it and see it that way, like I know a lot of people want to complicate it with all kinds of other beliefs that they have taken in. But once you see it like that, you just kind of set everything else aside for just a second, and it's like, okay, they wanted to raise the neutral interest rate with an elevated inflation expectation, and it totally happened. Right? Now, we look at what took place that made those things happen. And we look at all the rest of the stuff that we believe that was totally going to impact the economy in a major way, like all the investment into chip, microchip productions and stuff like that, or whatever, the semiconductor thing, right? Where's that? Where's all the economic changes to our environment that was going to take place because of that? Doesn't exist, right? Maybe it will happen in the future. Don't know. There's no talk about it anymore, so it's not a concern, and it probably won't be going into the future for people. Not on the same level it once was. This is how they operate. All right, moving on. Let's talk more about housing. What do we want to talk about housing? Eli, exactly. I always say what matters is food, water, ammo, basic medical, above all health. Yes, but unless you own land or at least rent a house, it's pretty much impossible. V-shaped recovery is baked in. Whatever bad that happens will end fast. Yui, what causes the next housing disaster? We are in it right now. Think about it. People can't get a house. If you can't get a house, then that means you're in a disaster zone, right? If everybody was able to get a house, then you're in a great housing market. I mean, it was like everybody could go get one. But if a good job can't even do it, then you're in a disaster. You're in a disaster zone. And this is it. See, people look at like the housing market crash as being like a crash in prices because that's what they like have intuitively been taught, right? If you see a crash in prices, that's a housing market crash. That's not the case, right? What's going on now is a crash in sales, in transactions. And that crash in transactions and sales is very devastating to a housing market when you think about what it is that the builders are looking for in order to provide more supply. Because it's a supply-demand issue. And if you have a situation in which that the demand for houses is very, like there's plenty of demand, all you have to do to see the demand is lower interest rates just a little bit or watch the interest rates come down just a little bit and watch how much demand shoots into the market. It just floods. Right? It's because all this demand is sitting there waiting. Come on. Right? The longer we wait, the more the demand builds. The demand doesn't go away. The population is still like wanting more and more, but the supply of homes is not increasing. So now you have this gap in production. Is there any way that you can fill in that gap? Every single day that you wait to build another house or another day that is waited to continuously add to the supply is going to be another gap in production that needs to be made up for, and it takes that much more time and effort to get there. Right? We're in it right now. This is it. If you are not actively trying to pursue the acquiring of a property right now, you are probably going to end up being on the bottom side of the wedge. You better start getting into capital. Property owner. I'm not saying you have to become a property owner right now if you are not actively trying to pursue that concept in your life. Whether it happens this year, next year, or 5 years from now, it's the motion of direction that you need to be headed in. That's the point, right? Same thing with buying into stocks, same thing with anything out there, starting your business. If you are not every day actively moving in that direction, you are going to miss this thing, because they're not going to turn off the money, guys. They're not. I don't care. We can wish and hope and dream and pray that they're going to do it right, but they're not. There's only one direction in which that they will go. It's going to be more money printing. Right? It's going to be expansion. Like right now, we are going through quantitative tightening, but at some point that is going to end, and they will go back into the expansion concepts again. And when that takes place, you're going to find ever increasing amounts of separation. It's like, what are you going to do? Right? If they turn that off, everybody falls into pain and misery. Either way, let's do it. Like, I am personally down. Let's go for it. Whatever happens, happens. I am throw the files in the air where the papers land. Let's pick them up and figure out where they are. Right? I mean, this is kind of the thing that I feel, but I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think what they are going to do is throw a bunch of smoke into the people's face, right? Cloud them up, not understand what the hell is going on out there, and they're going to inject a bunch of new money into the system. There's going to be some of it that ends up landing inside of the workforce that gives this appearance that, hey, look, they did a great job. But what we're going to find is that at the end of the day, there's going to be even more separation that had taken place. You know? I don't care who's in office. I don't care what you do. If you expand this money, if you expand it, it will separate. And if you are not positioning yourselves to take advantage of that separation, then you're gonna be on the bottom side of the wedge. And it's not hard. This is the problem that I think a lot of people end up facing, is that they will throw $50 at a hamburger before they'll put $50 in the stock market. Seriously. People they will dump $100 at the bar, not remember exactly where it went, have no clue of why they did it, and then consciously will not put $100 or even $10 into the stock market. And it's so easy. Like, there's so many apps out there. There are so many online brokers, and I use something as simple as Cash App, right? I mean, it's just like, it almost seems like it's like, not even real or something, right? But you can buy stocks, you can buy Bitcoin. There's many, many ways of doing this. And so to think, like, nowadays you can get into being a capitalist simply $10 at a time, even less, really. That's something that has never occurred before. See, the inequality is growing, but you have the ability to slow that down. Because people don't, well, that's your advantage. That's actually an advantage to you, believe it or not. Right? But that is, because them not doing it means that it gives you that much more opportunity to do it. If everybody else was doing it, you would be forced to have to do it in order to just compete. But since nobody else is doing it, guess what? It gives you the ability to separate yourself in that fashion. You may not be able to buy a house. You may not be able to get the property. You may not even want it. But you can take part in that industry, in that market, by investing in real estate investment trusts, finding ETFs that are, exposed to that particular market. It's easy. It's easy to do. The hard part is actually having the discipline to do it. Once you have started doing it, it feels good. You look at it, you're like, man, I can't believe it. I have got a whole paycheck saved inside of the stock market. You're not saving. You're investing, man. That's investing. Right? But because you put it at $20 at a time for however long you did it, it feels like you're saving. You're not. You're investing. You're dollar cost averaging. Do that with all kinds of stuff. Spending $50 down at the bar, why would you do that when you could put $50 into Bitcoin? Right? This is the huge mindset difference. People ask me all the time, how come you don't go get a new car? right? You can afford a new car. And I'm like, yeah, I probably could. I could, some months are better than others on YouTube, but I could probably put out the videos that I would need in order to go out there and get a new Silverado. In fact, I know I could. I know I could. Right? But then I wouldn't be able to every month go and put a little bit of money towards the position that I am that is actually creating the wealth, the generational wealth that I may be able to hand down, the security within my life by having assets of a bigger proportion. Yeah. This is the drag. I don't mean, like, I look at material things as a waste of time, a waste of effort. It's a waste of time because you took time to buy it, right? You took time out of your life to earn all that money to buy it. It took time away from you. I take my time and then I put it to something that it increases and it magnifies my time. And that's the difference inside of it. Time is the only thing you have, guys. All the rest of the stuff, you can't take it with you. It doesn't mean anything. It's all going to eventually rot, right? But time is the only thing you got. And if you could take your past time, effort, and then magnify it into the future, that is by far the greatest gift that you could ever possibly be given. And if you are young and you can take advantage of compounding interest, holy moly, guys. Being young is by far the greatest gift an investor could ever have. To understand that they have their time, right, to do this, to put into an investment that has compounding interest to it, to be very disciplined and contributing to that. Man, yeah, I would do anything to be able to have time back so I could take advantage of compounding interest. It would be the number one thing that I would take advantage of. Business, all that other stuff. You know what? Businesses fail. It's hard to keep it going. You got employees to deal with, all that other stuff. You can be a complete idiot the entire time so long as you put that $100, that $150 a month towards that account. You do that for 50 years. Yeah, you're going to be okay. You could probably be just fine. But you have to be disciplined to do that. It's hard to do. All right. Where's that super chat? Let's go find that thing real quick. Boom. Thank you so much for the 10 Canadian dollars, William G. Atheist number 1. What is your opinion on MMT? I believe we are already on that. This goes a long ways to getting us off the barbaric monetary policy. I doubt it. I very seriously doubt it. See, the problem is that I've never seen modern monetary theory take into consideration the underlying economic forces that separate the rich from the poor. All right? How do you do, like, are you going to, it's just like, it's a concept of theories that have no real basis of of logical reality behind it, right? They can use concepts very well. They're like something like the UBI aspect of it, right? We're going to take this money, we're going to inject to give you a cost of living increase, okay, and all this other stuff. And then they do examples of this, right? This is why you're not going to change the system. The system has to evolve into something different, okay? So, and here's the thing, like, you take a UBI type of concept, okay, where they're just going to literally just hand us money in a check. Like, here's a cost of living check that you can go and just spend on whatever it is you need. The problem that most people end up facing with this particular concept is that the examples that they use of it working are never universal. See, they take a certain group and they give them this universal basic income. And they say, here you go. Here's an extra $1,000 a month that you get to do whatever the hell you want with. Buy electricity, buy the entertainment, go spend it on groceries, go spend it on fun. It doesn't matter. It's yours. Now, they go and they ask those people, it was just like, hey, how much did this increase your life? Did it work? And they all go like, yeah, wow, what a difference did $1,000 make? And then they go, see, now explain that. And it was just like, okay, well, you're comparing them against a bunch of people who didn't get it, right? So therefore, immediately it's no longer universal, because the moment that you draw a circle around a select group of people and then you give them a particular, that's called segregation. So that's segregated basic income. To disguise it as a universal basic income is very disingenuous. So already I have lost the belief that UBI is what it is that monetary policy or modern monetary theory is trying to conceive of. Now, again, I may be getting that wrong because I don't really study MMT that much, right? But I kind of understand the basis behind the idea of it, right? And this isn't going to work. So now what I think a lot of people misunderstand is that there's going to be an injection of new money that comes into the system. And this is where I think it fails miserably for me, is that you're going to inject this new money into the system. Well, there's a reason why some people have money and some people don't. Is because of their belief system, the way that they were raised, and how it is that they handle that money. Now, some people would get that money in, my old man's here, some people would get that new money in and then say, hey, I am not going to increase my standard of living. I'm not going to enjoy this new money. I'm going to use it to invest and try to, do better with my life going into the future. And in that sense, if everybody did that, well, then you might have like something that would happen within the economy that might actually resemble something that of good. Like, I don't know how to quite describe a good, bad, or whatever. It's all your opinion of it. But I would imagine that would be something of a good thing that would happen, right? You get this money, you don't increase your standard of living, you pay off your debts, you increase your assets that you have, and then you try to create a better life for yourself with it. Okay, that's great. Most people are going to blow it on fun, right? They're going to buy a new car. They're going to, they're going to start buying, whatever streaming services that they love or whatever it is that's going on. They're going to spend it on that, which is going to be luxurious experiences, and they're not going to put it towards assets and savings. So this in itself will create a problem that when the new money comes in, if they do not move it into those assets, right, if they don't move it into paying off debt, move it into a responsible place, right? Let's just be real about it. And if they don't be responsible with it and instead turn it into things that are fun or better lifestyle, raising the standard of living, whatever it is, they start spending it in that. What ends up happening is that separates the rich from the poor, right? Because that money then flows into the corporations, which then helps out the stock owners and everybody else who is now, being a capitalist essentially. So here you have this money injection that's coming into the system, and if the people aren't 100% responsible with it, which means don't enjoy it, right? And instead use that to keep your standard of living as low as possible and then put yourself into a capitalistic position, then what you're going to end up finding is that there's going to be more inequality that takes place because of it. If you don't start taxing the rich in order to prevent this from happening, then you're going to find that inequality is going to get far worse. So tell me, like, when I bring up these economic forces that are going to happen, and you think, well, they'll just tax, or they'll just this, and they'll just, and they'll just, and they'll just. They just, the government should just, is another way of saying create more inequality. They just, right, is more money being spent. Every time they spend money, you have separation between the rich and the poor. You can give it an appearance to say, oh, no, look, they're help. They're all this other stuff. Well, yeah, right? Some socialist communistic countries give it an appearance that it's not taking place either. Still happening, right? See, this is why I always will always fall back to the four economic theories. Every single time, it will come down to Gresham's law, the Cantillon effect, the bullwhip effect, and Triffin's dilemma. Right? You internalize those four economic theories. You know them so well that you can explain them. Right? You can just, like, anybody comes up and says, "Hey man, what's the Triffin's dilemma?" And you'll be like, "Okay," and you just spit it out. And you understand it on that level, then you will then look out there at the news, you will listen to a lot of these people out there talking, and you will be like, none of that makes sense. That's all. They're talking hypotheticals. They are talking in ways that are, how can I put it, like superficial, right? It's none of it is real. And that's what's crazy about it is that the only thing that is real is the economy that you build. I don't know if people realize that. Each and every single one of you has your own economy. You are living your own economy. It's different from mine. It's different from, whatever other YouTuber you're watching out there. We all live a separate economy. You think about it, interest rates go up. It might be very painful for some people. It might be very beneficial for another, depending on how you place yourself within your own economy. Now, the greater whole, we all work together. We're all functioning in a way that says every single one of our movements has a direct reflect on the rest of the economy that's happening out there. So when you look out there at the broader economy, every single one of your actions actually has a reflection within that. I buy a Pepsi. The idea that that Pepsi is even sitting there had to have been somebody who was driving. There had to have been somebody who was punching keys on a calculator. There had to have been somebody standing on the other side selling me that Pepsi. In order for that Pepsi to get there to my hand, for me to make that purchase, it took a global effort upon all of us to get there. Every single one of us is tied together in that sense, which is strange to think. It's like the mechanical version of consciousness. We are all a single consciousness. Right? We all share a single energy, living this independent life of this human existence, which is, again, very esoteric, kind of crystal gripping way of thinking about it. But once you understand this higher level of feeling of energies that are around you, you realize we're all just a single one. And everything that I see is a reflection of the things and the feelings and the beliefs that I have inside. Now, you can take that reflection of what it is that you feel, and you can say, I'm being destroyed by this. And that's exactly what will happen out there. Or you can take this information and say, no, this information is heavy, it's hard. I can use this information to better myself some way, somehow, to help my family, to help my friends. There is something out there that is needed that I can do. And this isn't a problem, it's just an issue, right? It's just one that I can deal with. And so we start looking at that. It's not depressive. It's not one way or the other. It's just an is. It just is. So that's the way I look at it. That's the way I think a lot of people should look at it. If they look at it like it's a problem, it's a problem. If they look at the economy as, hey, this is a situation that I need to understand so I can better myself and be in it, then I have to understand why it is that we have such mass inequality, why it's going to continue. What would it take to not continue? Am I prepared to deal with the situation in which it's not continuing? Like, these are the questions that you have to ask, not what is it that they can do. They're not going to do anything for you. If they do it for you, it's not going to be for that person over there. Why is it? I mean, that's not fair, is it? Of course not, because we don't live in anything that's fair. It's not meant to be fair. I don't know what fair came in. Fair is like an illusion, right? All right, Simon says, be responsible for yourself. All right. Look at ZELLE or Redfin. Okay, just asking because I literally see zero reason to buy a single-family home with 30-year mortgage. The banks win and the people get nothing out of it. Nelson, I disagree. Like, are you talking like today? Because that's the same thing I would have said 3 years ago. But now I'm sitting on a piece of property right now that I could sell for far more than what I had paid for it, and a hell of a lot more than what I owe on it. That's a pretty cool position to be in. Like, why wouldn't somebody want that? Like, I'm thinking, like, right now, my payment on my house is less than what my buddy is paying for a rent on an apartment in Astoria. And I have equity in this house. I'm on private property. Like, why wouldn't, like, I ask people, why wouldn't you want that? What, you wouldn't want that in your life? Like, what would make any reason to have that in your life? If you can't make sense of that, then yeah, maybe you need to pursue different things in your life. Like, I understand not wanting to be a property owner. I didn't want to be one either. I wanted to be the capitalist. I wanted to be 100% assets, zero liabilities. That was my goal. Didn't work out very well for me. But I have a hell of a lot more in assets than I was ever anticipating I was going to have at this point. And I have all this debt with this house as well. So, right? I wanted the assets. I got the assets. I had to take on a certain part of debt in order to make that happen. But then my cost of living is really cheaper than it would be if I didn't do it. Right? All this stuff I didn't expect. I expected quite the opposite, right? Because, my expectations are nothing ever comes to what my expectations are going to be, right? Your expectations are an illusion anyway, or probably egotistical. So it's better just not have expectations. All right. You got in the market, the exploded for most they are underwater if they buy now. Your situation is unique compared to anyone buying now. Okay, well, I appreciate that, Nelson, but you do realize that at the time people were calling me quite the opposite, and they even call me a liar today, saying that no, my house is underwater and all this other stuff. And I mean, I don't care, right? I don't care what people think or say. I know with the situation I'm in, I'm quite happy. And, considering that I've had a foreclosure in my past, I mean, I would admit straight up to it. It was just like, man, this is a bad situation. But it's not. It's a great situation. And it went completely opposite. Like people said, once the interest rates go up, house prices come down. That was one of my major concerns, is that I was buying into a housing market that was about ready to go down in price. It did quite the opposite. Right? Very much to everybody's surprise, including mine. I don't think anybody was saying, oh, yeah, by the way, when the interest rates go up, you're going to find house prices really shoot up. This is like, who in the world would say that? Nobody, right? But that's exactly what happened. And now that even lends even more to my credible threat theory that interest rate adjustments is no longer the effective tool, nor should it even be considered. The communication about it should, right? Because that's the effective tool. Alrighty, guys. What time is it? I probably should be getting on to the idea of heading out. It is really starting to snow. So there's a couple of spots down Highway 30 that are a little bit concerning. Bradley is one of them, which is like the summit of Clatsop County. It's not that high up, but it is a pretty big hill. And it gets pretty nasty up there. And I would imagine right now it is probably pretty ugly, and I don't have chains for the Explorer. Or do I? I should look. Maybe I do have chains for this thing. Anyhow, I don't have to fly out for another, 9 hours. I almost hit 10 hours from now. Nelson, buying a house is not cookie cutter. There are many levers to be pulled in creative finance if one knows the tools. Absolutely, all-nighter. And that I think is probably the key to understanding the positioning that you need to take, is to know that there is not just one way to get in. There is the traditional way that most people end up going, where you save up a bunch of money, put it down on the house, they give you a loan, you move in, you make those payments forever. Then there's other ways of getting into a house that you have no intentions on living in, but you plan on living on the property itself, right? The house is going to get rented out, but you're going to live in the shack in the back or whatever, That's that type of thing is not like, people are like, what? Yes, I'm going to consider that. The house comes with a barn on it. I'm going to buy an RV. I'm going to park it in the barn. I'm going to live in the barn in the RV while I rent out the house, or even many rooms of the house or something of that nature. I even thought of this place. It's like, it's a fairly decent sized house. It's kind of big. It's 4-bedroom. And once my kids are out, I'm thinking, well, shit, I could rent out 2 of the rooms or 3 of the rooms even, and probably make a little bit of money, if not make at least the payment on the house. Now I don't have to do anything to be the property owner, right? It's already getting paid by somebody else. And that's like, for me, that's like a future possibility. Right now, I'm just looking for a place to raise my family, someplace that's safe and quiet and, private and whatever. Not an apartment. Benny's in the house. What's happening, bro? I'm about ready to end the live stream. Thanks for joining in, though. All right. Let's cruise down here a little ways. Instead of 800K, they are down 750K. Landlord is fun until the eviction, missed payments, and repair occurs. Yeah, I totally agree. And see, this is funny about it is like, a lot of people tell me, they're like, how come you don't get into property ownership? Why don't you be a landlord? Why don't you do all this other stuff? Because you'll be really good at it. And I think to myself, you have no idea how many horror stories I hear working at the lumberyard. Like a bunch of people who come into the lumberyard are property owners, talking about the rentals that they have and how it is that people absolutely destroy them. And it's funny because, like, I know one guy, he just plans on remodeling his place every, 10 years. Like, he just has no doubt in his mind he's going to put a new kitchen in, new bathrooms in, paint the walls, new rugs, new everything. Just completely just go and gut it all out and just redo the whole thing, every 10 years. He says because renters destroy it. He's been doing this like 30 years now, and he was just like, yeah, it's just like they just every 10 years I just remodel it. And it's funny to think like how little concern that you really have over the place at that point. Like, I mean, you obviously have concern over it, but it's just like if they're just like getting close to that 10-year mark, and it was just like, they screw something up, it was just like, I'm planning on taking care of that anyhow. That's like, it's kind of like almost like a relief. But I hear so many people coming in and they're like, dude, it's full of garbage. Oh man, you should have seen what they did to the wiring. Oh man, you should see like, all this stuff. And they talk about all this damage and horridness and bad things that took place. Let's see. Property owner is a great business. Absolutely it is. And that's why I'm saying you got two positions you can take. You can be both. You can be the capitalist and property owner. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. But you can take one or the other. Or you can be a businessman, right? Right? You can work business. That's another way of kind of really, excelling yourself and getting on the other side. But you always have to be within business. Eventually, like if you could build the business up to that, it kind of operates on its own. And then you're kind of getting a revenue from that. That's another way of going about it. And it's probably easier for more people to do that than to be disciplined and saving up working, say, a W-2 job or 9-to-5 job or something like that. But, to each their own. Everybody does it differently. I just work a lot of different directions, and that's the way I do it. And then put my money towards assets, and hopefully that are eventually going to get to a cash flowing position in my life at something, somewhere, somehow. And this is the steps that I'm taking to get there. Everybody is going to do it a little bit differently. Simon, my son turned 9 months yesterday. Wow, it's been 9 months already? Holy moly. Jesus, time flies. Well, congratulations, Benny. I'm sure you're having the time of your life too, aren't you? Time flies, but it's been very exciting and rewarding. I bet it has, Benny. Because this is your first kid, I believe, is what you said. And yeah, that's like, no wonder why it goes by so fast, right? It's just an amazing experience to just be in that, watching the kid grow, getting that, that connection with them being built and stuff. It's amazing, right? Buy a house, deal with some crappy tenants, build the portfolio. It doesn't happen overnight. Damien, I totally agree. And that's what I love, like Mike Zuber and Lumberjack Landlord and these guys out there, is that they're in the game right now, talking with people who are doing it right now. See, it's hard sometimes when it's just these guys who are elevated up there saying, oh man, I'll tell you how to do it and I'll tell you how I did it. Well, they did it during a time in which that you can't do the same things, right? They built it up a long time ago and now they have it and they're like, look what I got, right? You try and get it. Well, they're very difficult. What these guys are doing is they are working with people who are attempting to do it right now. And that's the point, right? They are helping out, giving their guidance, giving their, the talks about what it is that they are going through and experiencing right now. And the people who are on their team are also joining in for the first time. Not everybody, but a lot of people. Some people are already experienced, other people are just getting started. And to understand that those people are doing it, they are attempting to do it, and these guys are helping guide them with the best that they can possibly do, right? Which is all their experience and all the sharing of that. So if you want to be in that property ownership position, then you have to kind of associate with people who are doing it right now. Go and find those people who have done it, who are sharing that information with the people who are doing it, and then join in on those networks, those people who are doing it. See what they are doing. See what they just did in order to acquire the things that they are looking for, that you are looking for. Live in that space. Understand that energy and being in that environment. Like just like anything else out there. I just recently finished up that play where I was acting, and people said, dude, you were really good up there, man. You did a great job being up there and doing the lines and, playing the part and being in that position. You were really creepy, because it was a creepy play. I was actually playing the part of a guy who was about ready to kill and eat another dude, right? So it was really fun. It was a comedy. It was a dark comedy, but I'm sitting over there at one point in the corner of what is supposed to be a raft, right? It's representing this raft. I'm sitting over in the corner and I'm kind of squatted down and I'm just staring at these two as they're having a conversation, and I don't deviate and I don't change my expression. And I have this idea in my head that I want to kill and eat this guy. And the people in the audience said that they could feel that. They could feel that energy, And I thought to myself, man, I did it. It was so fun. It was so fun getting up there on stage, playing the part, doing the roles, doing the shows, getting in all that. And I'm thinking the group that I was with are some of the best that you could possibly be with. I mean, these are guys and girls who were like, college professors in this. Like they taught, acting classes on a big scale, right? These are people who have been experienced in this field for a very long time, done some serious, shows and stuff like that. And here we are, little theater in Astoria, and I happen to be in this group. Absolutely complete freaking amateur, right? Have no idea what it is I'm doing there. Have no idea what any of this is like, what the process is like, or nothing, right? They're totally taking me in, sharing this energy with me, and here it is that I'm feeling it with them. I'm feeling the professional, right? I'm feeling like being on stage is very natural. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. It doesn't feel wrong. And it feels right, and the group had accepted me into that and gave me that confidence to be out there like that. And I think to myself, man, I'm an actor. I don't have the experience that these guys have. They got, 20, 30 years of experience or more. Yeah. I had this show, this one show to do, this one play. But yet, being in that energy, being in that theater, being in that environment gave me the feeling that, yes, this is real for you. You are really an actor. You can do this, right? Very much like anybody else out there doing anything. I don't care what it is. Whether it's buying a house, buying stocks, getting in a relationship, trying to get better at your skill, at your job. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Being in it, being around the people who are in that energy, in that position of what it is that you want to feel and be like, right? You know how uncomfortable it felt going in there and doing an audition where I'm surrounded by all these people who are just acting it away? They're just blasting it out there through this audition like it's nothing. To me, I'm struggling to even read the lines without stuttering. I'm thinking, man, I just bombed this audition. There's no way. But the director knew who I was. She says, no, I want you to come back for a second audition. I think you can do better than that. Right? Isn't that cool? Go back, do the second audition. Didn't do much better, but I did a little better. She gave me the part. She gave me the shot, the opportunity. Take advantage. Dive into it. They're like, okay, you need to be here at 6:30. I showed up at 6:25. I want to be there the entire time. I don't want to miss anything. I want to absorb every single bit of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, the whatever. I don't care. Like every bit of this I want, because at the end of it, it's gone. And unless I do it again or continue on with it, this is going to be my experience, and I have to absorb it all, and I have to be in it, right? Be present the entire time. I wasn't looking at my phone, thinking about the next video, answering emails, or doing stuff like that. I was in the play. Do that for housing, for rental properties. Do that for the stock market. Do that for whatever it is that you want in your life. Just be in that energy and feel it. Be there. Don't think about other things. Don't think about the outcome. Don't think about the consequences. Don't think about any of that stuff. Just be in it and be there and feel it. And all the universe will start lining up. You know how many people came to me and it was just like, dude, great job. Can't wait to see you in more productions. I'm like, well, that was my first and maybe my only one. I don't know. I didn't really think about like future ones. I was just thinking about that one. And people were like, that was your very first play? And you're not going to do more? Like they were confused by it. They were like, dude, you're such a natural at this. Why wouldn't you do it? And I'm like, huh, doing it more. That's interesting. I didn't really think about that. All right. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening to me babble on about that. 410 people stuck it out for that. That's cool. 293 likes. Thank you for continuingly to hit that like button. Now you got a demon from acting, definition, hypocrite, deliverance in your future. All right. I mean, the right time to buy is when a person is in the right situation. Every financial is different, but being an average American can barely afford groceries. A home is now a luxury. I kind of agree with that, Nelson, but it's also an obvious separation of inequality that is happening here within the United States, is whether or not you can actually acquire a home. Now, I think about it, like a good time to buy a home is 30 years ago, right? 20, 30 years ago. And you'll be able to say that. forever. It's actually the same. Buying a house, the timing of buying a house is exactly the same as planting a tree. The best time to do it is 30 years ago. And so if you can just believe in yourself in that much that, hey, regardless of what ends up happening, I'm sticking it out on this property, right? That's different from saying, I am going to barely be able to make it, and I'm going to try and do this as an investment property, and if the renter doesn't pay and all this other stuff, then now you're taking on something that isn't the same as like buying a house that you plan on living in. These are two different things that are going on, right? So the meaning you're putting behind the actual purchase within itself is very important, right? Whether or not it's a good decision or not. Like, I mean, literally, if you're giving it meaning that this is a rental property, or if you're giving it meaning that this is a place where I'm going to live. This is two different reasons completely behind it. The action's the same. Right? So, just remember, tell yourself that, right? All right. There is no housing crash coming. It's here. That's why it's not, you're right, it's not coming. It's here. This is it. The crash in transactions. There's like, I mean, I don't know how else, I've been saying it for a while now. In fact, I think I heard somebody else say that. I think it was Economic Ninja at the Silver Symposium. I think I overheard him say that or something. I thought, yeah, dude, that's actually right. That's actually a good way of looking at it. It's not a crash in price. It's not a crash in anything other than transactions. The amount of transactions that are happening is dramatically falling. Right? Transactions leads jobs, leads price. Okay. I would agree in that, you can look at the past and look at it that way, but I don't see that happening now. I don't think that there is going to be a major rise in unemployment. And I don't believe that the Federal Reserve is looking at unemployment in the fashion that they once had. There was a time when they used to be concerned about low unemployment creating an inflationary scenario that they couldn't control. That's not the case anymore. They're not worried about that. Like, they can let unemployment run as hot as they want without any concern over it. So if they can keep unemployment low, like really low, regardless of whatever situation goes on out there, they can solve half of their dual mandate, regardless of what's going on, so long as they can keep that unemployment low. And again, like, they had low unemployment and created no inflation. Like, from the Obama administration all the way through Trump administration, there was low unemployment, and it didn't create the inflationary scenario that had occurred typically in the past. That's why I don't look at those economic indicators anymore. Not like that. Like, I have literally focused down on inflation expectation and how that raises or moves the neutral interest rate, because that's going to be what the Federal Reserve is looking at as far as their interest rate adjustments. If the inflation expectation was to fall dramatically and it starts dragging the neutral interest rate down, you bet they're going to lower rates. But that's not what's going on now. So to understand that the inflation expectation, due to like the tariffs and everything else that's happening out there, is raising that neutral interest rate, the Federal Reserve is going to wait and see. That makes sense. All right. They're not waiting and seeing what's going to happen within the economy. I mean, they are, but that wait and see what happened within the economy is to see if that neutral interest rate rises and moves ever closer to their position, so they don't have to really do anything. All right. If you got the credit and the income and you're renting a house, you wasting your money, make the sacrifice. Simon, can you address your housing inventory shortage narrative? The housing inventory is now back at 2019 range. It's okay. Okay. If there was, put it this way, there's a supply demand issue that has taken place. And now you can say the inventory is at this level. And that's comparable to 2019. But what you can't compare is the demand side of things. Right? You can say, hey, inventory's at this. But you can't say demand was this and this is what it is today, because demand is really a change of feelings from one day to the next. I'm not buying in on this. No, not buying in on this price. Not at all. Prices come down to so, oh, hey, I'm here. Right? All of a sudden there's demand. So it's a supply-demand imbalance that has taken place. Not just the supply side of things comparatively to the past, meaning that you can look at the supply side and say demand was a constant, and therefore supply back then compared to today is a reasonable like indicator to look at. It's not. You have to look at what supply-demand imbalances were back then to compare to today. And there is a hell of a lot more people who want a house today than there is available homes to buy. You can see that reflective inside of the prices. Now, the prices don't stay up because all the people got together and they're like, hey, here's the thing, right? If we all together keep our prices elevated, then we'll force those people to have to pay a high price. Wouldn't that be awesome? And I would be like, hey, you know what? That sounds great. We're all going to raise them up really high and keep them up. Okay. I'm going to be the first person to lower mine below everybody else's. And so will the next person, and so will the next person, and so will the next person, until they eventually get to a point where it says, I'm not going to lower my prices anymore than this. This is it. All right. After this, it's too expensive to replace, it's too expensive to repair, it's too expensive to insure, it's too expensive to pay the taxes on, it's too expensive to all this other stuff. This is as far down as I am going. All right. So now supply-demand imbalances, or balance, or whatever it is now being met or found. The moment that the price gets cheaper, demand increases. Once the accessibility gets cheaper, interest rates come down, demand increases. Demand is not a constant. Supply can be looked at as a constant in some ways if you say, hey man, we got this much supply coming in, but then even on that, the availability of new inventory coming to the houses from people who are sitting tight, so to speak, that is also very flexible. And that if the capabilities for them to move into another house was more prevalent, then you would find more inventory coming in. So even in itself, the inventory is not a constant in any way of looking at it. That it really comes down to a belief change, right? Today I don't want to, tomorrow I might. Same thing with the demand side of things. So I have a very difficult time looking back at 2019 and say, okay, compared to what's going on today, it's not the same. You have to look at what's going on today. The capabilities of the buyer is not present, right? A good job. I got a really good job. I got 20% down. I go to the bank and the bank says, you don't earn enough. I got a good job and 20% down. It's not enough. The interest rates are too high for you to make the payment. Okay. So now that's a situation that people are facing. So what do? They go and rent. Extremely high, expensive rent. Now, the person who buys the property says, well, that rent, right, is not enough for me to go out and build new houses. So they don't. The capability of the buyer itself has now limited the availability of new inventory to come on because it's not profitable. And that's the place that this is the case that we are facing. Now we can say, let's complicate it. Let's find reason. Let's find excuses. Let's find, answers to all this other stuff. Or you can just step back for just a minute, right? And you can say, Cantillon effect is now at play. Separation between the rich and the poor occurs between property ownership, capitalists, and everybody else. All right? So this is the situation. People who have the money, the new money that comes in, buy property, and they position themselves inside of the stock market, bond market. They become the capitalist, put their capital to work. Everybody else is wondering what it is that they can do with their day job in order to acquire what it is that the capitalists and property owners have done. Well, there was a time they could have done that. There is still a way of doing it, but you have to be very creative. The most important part about it is to understand why it's taken place. Right? That property ownership is very much a sign of inequality. And the more concentrated it becomes, the more you can actually see the inequality. And people say all these big corporations or whatever, these, investment groups getting together, you can participate in that. You can be part of those investment groups too. It may not be the one that you're talking about, but you can go and take part inside of real estate investment trusts just as like anybody else out there, take advantage of the real estate market without actually doing anything in the market itself other than making the purchase. Most people don't. All right? They'd much rather have the life of being in the house than understanding that in order to get that property in that house, to live in that house, that you have to be a capitalistic property owner to begin with. You can't work for it. Working for it is hard, and it's very difficult. And if you want to do that, you're going to work a lot, like I do. All right? You put out a lot of work and time and effort. And then you take the extra, wherever the hell extra is, and you put that towards stocks and bonds and real estate payments, right? And it's not hard to see what you need to do. What's hard is being disciplined and taking the time, because that's the most important part, is that it's going to take a long time. Yeah. Kids have it so good. They have no idea how good they have it because they have a lot of time on their hands. They can actually spend the time doing this stuff, becoming the capitalist, becoming the property owner, so that by the time that it actually is paying off for them very well, they're still young. They're still young enough to enjoy it. By the time I'm actually going to get into a position in which it's paying off, I'm going to be able to hand it down to Freddie. Say, here you go, kid. Because as far as me, like, I wasted too much time. 40 years old, had absolutely nothing, broken, dead, nothing going on. No like side incomes or anything like that. I guess I was calling bingo a long time ago, 40 years ago. Or 40. But it was a much different way of living, a much different life. Once I changed all that around and started changing the way that I was conducting myself and behaving, man, things started changing around for me too. See, this is what's funny about it, is that people were like, man, you can't make it in today. I'm like, the hell you can't. All right? I started from less than nothing. I started as a alcoholic, broke, right, in debt, had nothing, like, I mean, that's 8 years ago. That's the way I was starting out. Right? Somebody who graduated college or high school 8 years ago was sitting in essentially the same position I was in, except that I had skills, right? I had experience. And with that experience, I said, well, I better use something. And that's the only thing I got. This is what I came up with, right? Yeah. Right, wrong, or indifferent, this is what I did. And today I'm going to be flying down to Vegas so I can get on stage and speak about economics to some of the greatest people that you could possibly meet. And I'm so looking forward to it. And thinking that was going to be something that was in my life is not, like, that was not on my horizon. And I did not see that coming at all. All right, guys, it's been a while, but there was so many people hanging out here. We had 399 people watching with 401 people watching with 320 likes. And again, thank you so much for being out here. This has been a great live stream. We have covered a lot of topics. Simon, are you saying the prices won't fall if unemployment increases from here when housing inventory? Okay, I think the biggest word in there is if. Do you want to put, like, we can throw a crap ton of scenarios out there as what if this, what if that, what if the other thing? Like, we can do what ifs all day long. And I mean, very well, I mean, you can nail it, like with your what if, you can do a great prediction with that, and you might be very accurate within that statement. The problem that I am seeing right now is that what if unemployment rises is going to take unemployment rising. Then if unemployment does rise, it's going to have to rise significantly for a while, right? Because there is still plenty of people out there who are not underwater on their house. Most of the people who are getting mortgages are very qualified buyers. It's not anything like the great financial crisis. And if it's a situation like mine, where even if you had purchased 3 years ago at an elevated price, I could probably sell my house for a profit, and not even if I was to lose my job, like I said, sell my house for a profit and not have to cut the price at all. Even if I did cut the price, it wouldn't be under what I paid for it. You see where I'm getting at? Like, if that unemployment was to rise to create a burden on the housing market, what we would have to see is unemployment rise significantly for a while, create an environment in which that payments were not being made, right? That payments not being made mean that you couldn't even sell the house because you would be underwater on it. That's only going to be for a few people. You think about it, there hasn't been a lot of mortgages issued in the last few years. It's not like it's been a booming housing market where a bunch of people are taking out mortgages. In fact, most of the people own their house. Most of the people out there have.
You guys need to leave in about half hour.
Okay, I'm going to call it quits. Okay, thank you. Go put some shoes on. He's out walking around in the snow with bare feet. So anyway, most of the people are not living in a position in which that even if they were to have a burden on their income or whatever, that they would actually be in a position in which that their house would get foreclosed on. They could just sell it or even rent it out or do all kinds of different options since it's not the same as it once was. Now, let's just assume, we'll put the what if in there. What if unemployment was to be elevated for a significant amount of time to actually create the drop in payments that would then move these houses into a foreclosure position? That takes a very long time. So you're talking like, what, a year, 2 years maybe, especially if there was such a significant rise in them, like a flood of foreclosures coming in. It takes a while to process through these things, right? So maybe the AI speeds it up or something like that, but you still got a process in which that this goes down that is very easy for the resident to screw with. Like you make a payment every once in a while and you kick the whole thing over again and never really making payments on your house and never really getting evicted. Right? So there's ways of people playing and manipulating the game to continue on. I'm not including that. I'm just saying, we got what ifs going on. So what if unemployment rises, foreclosures begin to rise, it takes forever, we're talking like 2 years down the road, right, before you see any change in the housing market? So you want to wait another 2 years? See where I'm getting at? Like, who knows anything can happen in 2 years. And that's going to take a rising of unemployment, which isn't happening. Not yet. And if it did, it would have to be there for a while. So we would recognize it taking place. It's not going to just be a month or two. It's going to have to be like a year, right? So it's just better to look at things the way they are as opposed to what ifs or what's, the credible threat part of things. Like if I look at the credible threat, I don't look at what this could do. I'm looking at how is it that people are feeling off of this information that is being delivered. Much different. Like the outcome? I don't know. Who knows what the outcome will be? How do people feel about this information that's being delivered? Because that is what the credible threat theory is. Okay. The what ifs, we can sit here and make 1,000 what ifs all day long. There's people out there who do great YouTube videos on what ifs. All right. Sarah wants to go because she's probably worried about the weather. And I don't blame her because it is nasty out. And I'd imagine Highway 30 is probably pretty gross. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for so many people who have joined in on today's live stream. It's almost a 2-hour long live stream with 408 people watching, 342 likes. Thank you for hitting that like button. Thank you for going to see me and the rest of the crew in Vegas this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to hanging out with All Nighter and everybody over at the, I guess we rented at a big Airbnb. I don't know. We're going to go check that out. Yeah, and so I don't know, man. I'm not sure what I'm going to do tomorrow. Sarah wants to go cruise around Vegas, so I might do a video just, live streaming somewhere in Vegas or something like that, which ought to be kind of fun. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for hitting that like button. Thank you for all the support and encouragement. Thank you for helping me to understand economics better. And that's it. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.